This podcast is sponsored by NPR's podcast, The Last Cup. Lionel Messi is arguably soccer's biggest star, but winning the World Cup has always eluded him. The Last Cup is a tale about confronting age and human limitations, a story about loyalty, identity, and what his journey reveals about us. Hosted by Argentine journalist and NPR correspondent Jasmine Garst, The Last Cup is a dual-language narrative podcast focused on Messi's memoir. What's expected to be Messi's final World Cup, the podcast will explore themes of capitalism, immigration, class, and race. Check out The Last Cup from NPR and Futuro Studios. Find it in NPR's embedded podcast feed.
Hello, EggChasers. It's the EggChasers Rugby Podcast, the podcast about rugby that doesn't take itself or the game too seriously. Here with you every single Monday morning for very nearly 10 years, 52 weeks of the year. And if you appreciate that, well, you can thank us by hitting subscribe. You can tell a mate. You can go and get more content and support the podcast. Patreon.com/EggChasers. In the Rugby Dungeon right now with me live, I'm Tim, is JB.
Hello, Tim.
No socks.
No socks.
JB.
Right.
And Phil.
Hello, Tim. JB's feet they're taking up prime time space right in the middle of the room.
Well, here's how it
blocking my
is.
view of the computer and the waveform. But
They are occupying some prime real estate right here, but that's what the people want.
exactly.
This is the first of two podcasts in your feed. The domestic pod will be coming in a little bit, but this is the international-based podcast, which, well, really is only looking at two games.
Yep, that's it. Well,
Really, it's only looking at two people.
yeah, and some general rugby themes.
Yeah.
Rugby carousel, the ins and outs, the sack race.
Yeah. So Wales, Australia, England, South Africa, two very, very disappointing ends to two very, very ordinary years. Well, no, not even ordinary. Shambolic.
Well,
Abject.
England's results this year the worst since 2008. So
Was that Andy Robinson?
just after Robinson.
Oh, no, it was after
he
the-
was
'cause
2000.
Brian Ashton was
Brian
to-
Ashton
got to
was
the World Cup
2007. So was it the start of the Martin Johnson?
Yeah, it
reign?
might have been.
Oh, actually, it might have been pre-2008. So it might have been the Andy Robinson era. Anyway, not good overall for England. And if it's not good overall for England, a terrible week for England. This was worst game I can remember since the World Cup final.
I
Probably.
enjoyed it. I thought it was,
Well, as a proud Welshman, you would enjoy this.
I enjoyed both games. I enjoyed them. Hang on, what's going on with our waveform?
We laughing at you. That's fine.
Fine.
With you, JB.
What can I tell you? There were two very entertaining games. I thought watching the England game in particular was great fun. I thought it was eminently watchable for what South Africa are.
They were very good. They were very, very good, and they bullied England. And it was, well, in that respect, there was a lot of echoes of the 2019 World Cup final.
Remarkably so. The World Cup final, it really had more than just shades of the World Cup final. The way that in the World Cup final and this game, England, you never felt they could do anything because as soon as they start doing something, they risk knocking on. And as soon as they knock on, it's over. South Africa are 30 yards, 40 yards downfield because the scrum will inevitably lead to a penalty. The penalty will be kicked into the corner, and that will lead to a sustained pressure of South African dominance.
All right, let's cut to the chase. Eddie Jones.
Well, I would have fired him a long time ago.
You would have fired him a long time ago.
You would have got Dean Ryan in 2018.
Exactly right.
I'm curious what you think off the back of this, Phil.
I still wouldn't, but probably because it's just too late now. I think I've always had a lot of faith in Eddie Jones because I like the way that he reacts to things, and I'm probably now looking back on his past glories too much. The 2 years when he picked up with England, his
Grand Slam, clean sweep in Australia,
his 19 unbeaten games.
How much would you pay not to have beaten Australia 3 times now? Because that's the root of the whole thing.
all this misery.
Yeah.
But I look back to his time with Japan and beating the Springboks, and we might touch on that a little bit later when we get into some of the failures in this game. You look back to his time with the Brumbies and with Australia, where he narrowly lost out with the World Cup. His time in the South Africa squad in 2007. So you look. I'm probably now looking back with rose-tinted glasses, or putting too much weight on past glories rather than actually looking at his current failings. But I still probably wouldn't. But I kind of know that. I kind of say that knowing this deep down. I think England have got zero chance of winning the World Cup. I think they have no chance of beating France, Ireland, South Africa, or New Zealand in a game that matters.
Agreed.
I disagree with that, because I think with a reasonable performance we will make the quarterfinals, and that will be against Wales or Australia. And so I think we could very, very conceivably, even not playing at our best, get to a semi-final.
So I would agree with that, but I don't think we can beat any one of those teams I've listed, and we're going to have to beat most likely two of them. Two of those teams that I've listed. I
agree with that. I've actually, and this is a little bit like Twilight. Do you remember when it was Team Edward, Team Jacob?
Yes, I do.
I've kind of flipped now. I've been Team Phil for a long time with you there. I've flipped. I'm Team JB, and
good.
Get him out. Get the kids in.
One thing that was
all eventually.
Well, one thing that was ringing in my ears yesterday, as I was at Twickenham, I was working for TalkSport there, was when you said, Phil, last week when we were discussing the decision to kick the ball off the field at the end of the game, and you said, I backed the decision, which I agreed with you. I did as well. But you said, had I been in the stadium, I would have been livid. Being in that stadium, it is a very, very relevant factor. I watched that, and I'm telling you, the crowd were booing.
Yeah.
I don't know how much it came across on the telly.
Yeah, it did.
It was loud.
Certainly reported in the Times this morning as well. They were booed off. You know, what happened to the narrative around Eddie Jones, that he comes into a rugby team, he works them super hard, everyone gets, shorted out. They win a couple of games, but the weight of expectation and the weight and volume of work is too much, and within 2 years everybody just collapses. That seems to have disappeared. Yeah. But it seems to me, you look at this team and that is exactly what's happening.
Well, this is it. So I'm with Team JB now, because Eddie Jones's reaction to that abject performance was, it's my fault. Because I don't know that it's Eddie Jones's fault. The facts on the ground, the stuff that we do know, absolutely cast iron, is that world-class players, multiple-time European champion players, are a shadow of themselves when they pull on an England shirt. We know that's the case. That doesn't necessarily mean it's Eddie Jones. It could be any number of things. They're hesitant. They don't appear to know what each other's doing. They don't appear to know what they're supposed to be doing. And I don't know what the reasons are, but if we take Eddie Jones at his word, he's coming out and saying that it's him. That's the reason that's happening. And if that's the case, well, if that is the case, then off you trot.
Well, it's multifactorial, as so many things are. So if it's not linked to him directly, it's not exactly his fault. So selection, of course, is his fault. Maybe team overall strategy is his fault. Then it's one step removed from him. So if they look a little bit sluggish, it could well be the fault of his strength and conditioning and how hard they're working, because they work bloody hard. I mean, if you listen to anyone who tells you about England camp, they'll tell you how hard they go in and they work, and that's just the minimum expectation. And I don't know if that is the greatest idea when you're midway through a season in autumn internationals. Then you've got to play these absolutely enormously physical games. So I'm sure they load them appropriately and deload them appropriately. But he is right. Everything comes down to him, and it has done for absolute years. I would have got rid of him a long time ago. But I think this might be worth discussing what he got wrong again. It seems like just a circular conversation, because we know what he gets wrong. We talk about it all the time. But nothing seems to change.
Well, okay. Well, bearing in mind there was, as we've already discussed, echoes back to the Rugby World Cup final. I don't think anybody was sat there this week, even the biggest Eddie Jones critic was going, those 4 props that were involved for England shouldn't be the props that were involved for England. I think most people would go, those front rows are like, I'm happy with that. Yeah, totally fine. And I'm actually okay with the way he's flipped the bench around, because Mako played really well last week. I'm fine with that, and strength off the bench, etc., etc. But what would England do now for a prop that can scrummage?
Well,
I don't care about how good you are at being the pivot man, tip off passes. I want a scrum that is solid, please.
Yeah,
and that's JB. I think you've been critical of Franz Malherbe in the past.
Yeah, not today.
He showed why he might actually be the most valuable player on the planet.
He was good, wasn't he?
He was astonishingly good. The positions he put Mako into at times. Mako actually won a penalty on one of them where Flats called it out immediately. Mako was so badly manhandled and somehow won a penalty.
Oh, was that the first half?
First half, yeah.
Oh, he got folded, didn't he?
He got absolutely folded, and the ref gave a penalty against Malherbe, which was... Well, it looked wrong to me, and Flats... I don't know anything about scrimmaging, but it looked wrong to me, and Flats said exactly what I was thinking, which is that is totally, totally wrong.
It's interesting. So I don't think Mako's a very good scrummager.
No.
Anyway, I mean, he's
long
big,
been...
But who is? Because no one's been saying, he's not picking... I don't know. Who is there? How do England not have any scrummaging props?
This might be...
So the scrummaging loose head, you'd go Marler. But scrummaging tight heads...
We've been talking about the tight head issue for a long time.
Cole played 76 minutes in the World Cup final and got absolutely destroyed.
He got marmalised.
Yeah.
So if we run through the tight heads that have been in the squad...
Well, just have a look at Wales.
Trevor Davison.
So we had Sinclair, Joe Hayes, Will Stewart... Patrick Schickling, Trevor Davidson, Will Collier,
Nick Shonnett,
B. Allo, Nick Shonnett has previously been in there, Harry Williams, Dan Cole, if you go back long enough. That's... How many of those would have stood up to the pressure? I don't think...
Well, yeah, I mean, there is an element...
I don't think any of them.
Well, do you remember who they used as their scrummaging loose head last time they played and beat South Africa?
Last year, Bevan Rod.
Bevan Rod. Right? So sometimes you come to the conclusion, don't you, that we're not going to win this. So why bother even trying?
Well,
the other scrummager could have been, as a loose head, could be Valrapava Ruskin, who for a long period of time this season had not conceded a single scrum penalty. Was the only prop who had not conceded.
He's also long-term injured, isn't he?
He played this weekend.
So no, he's not.
So,
but to sort of broaden that point out, I think you just absolutely hit nail on the head there, JB, when you said you're trying to fight fire with fire, and actually that was one of the biggest faults in England's approach, because all the chat before the game was we're matching their bomb squad. That's why we got Genge and Cowan-Dickie on the bench. Manu's there for a physical presence in midfield because we're playing South Africa. We've got Alex Coles on the flank because we need another line-out option.
We have to have 3 line-out options.
What are we doing? We're England at Twickenham.
Sounds desperate, doesn't it?
Well, so there's an element... It's a weird position because there's an element of it that is we're going to pick our tactics because of the opposition. We're not going to dictate the tactics. We're going to pick it for the opposition, which is... That actually shows some humility, rather like playing off the world champions, rather than guiding your own course. But there's also an element of it that shows hubris. And by that I mean, and I mentioned it before, when Japan played South Africa in 2015 and beat them, Japan held their hands up and said, we are never going to beat South Africa by going full bore up front. They had the fastest scrum in the world where all they did was hook straight to the back and get it out. It was a totally different tactic. And England, obviously Eddie Jones is well aware of that tactic because he was one of the men who...
He invented it.
Yeah, exactly. He guided the ship that was doing that. And he's not put his hands up and said, Sinclair, Mako, Will Stewart, Genge, they might offer amazing things in other dimensions, but they are not... capable of matching the Springbok up front, so maybe he should look at... And that's hubris. That is overconfidence and arrogance.
It's so prescribed. Because rugby's so complex, it's like eliminating a layer of the food chain out. So you say, okay, I'm going to eliminate, I don't know, one layer of the food chain. And then that goes, then all of a sudden, you've got loads of other problems. So you go, right, I'll do that, and I'll do that, and I'll do that. And that's kind of how I thought Eddie's tactics were. Like, he's looking at South Africa and saying, okay, we're going to now do X strategy, but when you execute X strategy, it just means the South Africans do various other secondary strategies. He doesn't have the answer to those things because he's letting them dictate exactly what they're going to do. That was his overall problem.
Hubris, I think, is a great word for it.
And of that element
of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would have thought it's like one of the first principles of coaching, and you'll know this at Talk HJB, and I do this with an under-15 team every week, and you'll remember it from teams that you've played in and good coaches you've had. Mm-hmm. They look at the resources they have available, and they tailor the way you play to the skills that you have. Warren Gatland did that. That's how he won Grand Slams and
Exactly right.
almost could have got to a World Cup final and could have potentially won had it not been for that red card for Sam Warburton, because he played to the strengths that he had at his disposal. And with that in mind, England do have... I don't think England's player pool, which always... There's a lot of depth, but I don't think the top-level talent is quite at the level where some people think it is.
In certain positions.
I just think
But there's enough there that you can go, we're going to tailor a game plan for this group.
Yes. Oh, yeah. There's definitely enough of that.
I think when you look at Wales and how they discover certain key talents, back certainly in Gatland's day, they discover them by giving them a chance. And Eddie does give lads a chance. There's no saying he doesn't. I mean, Marcus Smith came from literally Brighton College straight into an England camp. So he does give particularly young lads a good look at. But Wales find these guys, like I say it all the time, how many props would you need to go through in England shirts before you got to Thomas Francis?
Oh, yeah, you'd be double figures.
Yeah. So he's not given enough lads the chance. And he has this remarkably clever get-out card, which is Test Match Animal, which is such a nebulous standard. Nobody knows what it means.
Yeah.
So you can just say, he's not a test match animal. What does that mean? You literally can't nail him down.
But he's brought a huge number of players into squads, but there's a huge number of players who've either not played or played like minutes. So there's loads of guys who have they got into a squad once or twice and then just never made it past that point.
Yeah.
Because they're not the test match animal.
I mean, there's no way that Nick Ezekwe or Tamana Harrison or Luther Burrell would not have long, successful careers with Wales.
Oh, yeah,
no way.
100%.
They're too useful.
100%. But you look at the guys who have, like, I always think of the centres who, like... Tompkins or Chris Harris or Johnny Williams, who's obviously played for Wales, who all would have been available for England at a point in time.
I don't think, had Chris Harris not been Scotland qualified, I don't think anyone would really have a major issue with the fact he hadn't been capped by England, let's say.
No. Same thing, isn't it?
Which is exactly
how many outside
point.
centres would you want to go through until you got to Chris Harris?
Yeah, exactly. And then when he gets the opportunity, he's a Lion now. Because he was that good, given the opportunity,
and he just does like a handful of things perfectly.
Yes, and his team and his coaches use him in that capacity within a system that's tailored to the resources they have available.
Yeah, I think Eddie has got what he wants to do in his mind, and if you can't fit into what he wants to do, he's not willing to change very much, really, in order to accommodate you. It's a real problem.
But that's a problem that's developed with England because. He wasn't like that with Japan.
Yeah, his resources were much more finite. Maybe that's the abundance. Is actually the.
That's where it comes to the hubris.
Yeah, and the other problem is with this: when you've got standout number ones in positions, it's very hard to keep a standout number. I mean, there's very few guys in the world who get to the number one position, stay there. Alan Wynne-Jones would be one, maybe. Even he's declining. Etzebeth is definitely one.
Etzebeth would be one. Richie McCaw, would be one. There's
a handful of them. Even Richie McCaw was declining quite rapidly towards the end.
He won his final game. He won the World Cup.
Yeah,
so.
McCaw, Hooper, Pocock, those two guys probably in there. But that's really it. And I looked at Billy. I thought it was woeful on the weekend.
It is
absolutely woeful.
Not the kind of game for him.
But this is it, because Tom Curry does not look like a world-class 7 playing for England.
How many turnovers has
none? Zero.
None yesterday.
0 in the autumn series,
and about 1 per game for the last 12. It's just, what is that?
He's So Tom Curry does not look like a world class 7. He looks So Mario Itoje does not look like a world class lock.
Nope.
No,
I didn't even notice him yesterday.
He had a few good moments, a couple of good steals, but otherwise anonymous.
But these are what legitimately those two that we just mentioned.
They're number ones.
They're world class players.
Yeah.
They're the kind of players who, a few years ago, any other team in the world would have had in them. But now, no.
Yeah, Manu's another one. Manu's got to go. Manu has to leave the stage now. It's ridiculous. Every time England do something reasonably good, it involves Henry Slade.
Wait, stop. Manu's response to the game yesterday was, the defeat will make us tighter as a group.
Who cares?
That's what he said.
Great. Well done.
Great.
Cheers.
No, it's not Manu's fault. But
no,
I mean, he's not. You're not going to say no, Eddie. I know you've selected me. I don't think you should pick me.
Yeah. It is not his fault. In the same way, if he selected me, I wouldn't be very good, but I'd still play. You're exactly right. But he shouldn't select him anymore. all week the build-up has been, oh, well, if Manu's fit, or if Manu does this, or... and meanwhile, Marchant is going to bloody France.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the crime of the whole thing. If you want to see how the England system is breaking down, you put all of your eggs in the Manu basket and you've let England's most talented back walk out the door to France because you don't give him the opportunity or the chance.
Manu's 31 with a long history of injuries.
Crazy.
And Marchant's, 25?
Yeah. I've just gone, bye, see you later. Marchant...
I know, that winds me up.
But let's go back to the game a little bit, because we've spoken at length about England. South Africa were very, very good.
They were very good. Etzebeth is a freak.
Well, the whole pack, just you said it before.
Rugby gods
just bullied the whole pack bullied England, and Faf, Willemse, and Willy Leroux just controlled the game, controlled the tempo, controlled when they wanted to play, controlled when they didn't want to play, controlled when they wanted to take points, either through penalties or just taking a drop goal. Just
bang.
Just we'll have this now. We'll just take 3. We'll go back. We'll move things forward again. They were excellent.
Willy Leroux, with South Africa not having a 10 that's an out-and-out 10, and the main man, I think they have to pick Willy Leroux at fullback.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because he makes
100%.
He makes that fly half so much better. Takes so much weight off their shoulders.
Even when they've got Andre Pollard, who is an out-and-out 10, Willy Leroux, still
you have to have,
he makes things tick. He just makes everything tick. And you can, like, Colby is talented enough. Colby's played 10. He can kick sticks. I know obviously he's unavailable for this, but you lose so much if you put Colby into that role. Although with Arance, you might not actually lose that much, because he was so similar to Colby in the way he moved.
I mean, wow. That step on Marcus Smith. I mean, Marcus Smith looks like he's literally stuck in quicksand. Like, legitimately.
He looks like he is literally stuck in quicksand. Yeah.
He just can't move. He looks completely baffled by what is unfolding in front of him.
By the way, I thought when I was a kid that quicksand would be a much bigger part of my adult life than it's ended up becoming.
So I do know an area in North Wales which has real quicksand. And
really?
Do you want to go and just play with it? See how it feels?
I have dabbled with it, yes. I've dabbled with it, see how dangerous it is when I'm fishing. In West Shore. I didn't know West Shore. Actual quicksand.
That's exciting.
Wow, that is
Isn't
exciting.
It?
I stopped you mid-flow then, JB. You were.
No, it's a far more interesting point than quicksand. And tar pits. I was certain that we'd die in a tar pit at some point.
Just on Marcus Smith, a mercurial player, incredible talents, and when his team are scores down, he is capable of doing some special things. I have never seen him once for England take a game by the scruff of the neck.
Not yet.
The last 8 minutes of last week are the best he's played for England, I think.
Well, and to be fair, South Africa last year, he had a good game.
Okay.
So when they won by a point.
Yeah, 27-26.
And Marchant and Slade were the centres.
Yeah.
A point out. Anyway. But anyway.
I do feel... So the overall criticism of Marcus Smith in an England jersey, I think, is warranted. I feel some of the criticism he got specifically after this game was a little bit harsh.
Do you not think his kicking was really bad?
His kicking was poor. Yeah, his kicking was poor. And that bit's not harsh, but he got no ball. No. And what ball he did get was on the back foot.
Yeah, you're right.
Constantly. Now, his kicking should have been better than it was, but this is not the game to judge Marcus Smith on.
No, that's
Judge
fair.
him on the preceding 15 or 16, fine. Absolutely. And I'll be with you. But this is a tough game.
You can't judge him over 80 minutes against South Africa. What was the point?
It's just a tough game for him. It's a tough game for anyone in that position.
I would expect him to shine in pretty much every game that he plays, because that's his job.
But how much better did... I mean, it's all relative because England were poor, but how much better did Farrell look when Marcus Smith went off?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. I think it's more system than player, though. I mean, I'm sure you don't disagree with that. But one of the two needs to take over. That's nothing new. I think if you're going to play Marcus Smith, you just got to let him be Marcus Smith. You can't let him be this sort of robot, which... I mean, how many times did they try the high cross-field bomb or, kicking it deep?
Because they're getting into this attacking shape that worked really well and was very fluent against New Zealand. They were in those positions a lot, but the ball carriers were hesitant. It was just at that heart, and maybe it's confidence, I don't know. I'm not good enough to know exactly why, but they were getting into the shapes, but the execution was just poor.
The execution has been repeatedly poor. Like in South Africa, in the New Zealand game, a few times in the first half, but many times in the second half until the last 8 minutes, England got deep into New Zealand's 22, 10 phases deep, and then knocked on, got turnover, didn't look after the ball at the back of the ruck. And that's just not good enough. That is inexcusable. And in this game, again, in second half, there was at least 2 line-outs on the South Africa 5-metre line that they fluffed.
Yeah.
And again, it's just not... That is just...
Line-outs.
Inexcusable.
Line-outs are... I struggle to understand how a professional team can lose a line-out. Unless it's a skill error or a catastrophic failure, like you slip a lift or... the wind catches the ball. I mean, there's no wind in Twickenham. But, unless it's something like that, it is beyond me how you can not win every single line-out. Or at least 90%. It's just, it blows my mind.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought England's line-out, not a lot of other things, but the line-out actually went okay in the first half when
I thought
when Jamie George was on. He hit his arrows, I think, pretty much all of them. And then when LCD came on, in the second half, the line-out went awry at key times.
Yeah.
I would guess all of the lost line-outs were in the second half.
I was reading something on Twitter, obviously, about the physicality of the South African pack. And the basic principle was, and I quite like this principle, everyone talks about how physical South Africa are. But it's more a mindset, because he started comparing the relative sizes of the players, and South Africa are not much bigger, if at all bigger, in key positions than England. So everything that South Africa are doing in terms of their brute strength and bullying and physicality, there might be a difference in terms of how powerful or how each individual can deploy their strength. But they're basically the same size blokes. It's all mental.
Yeah. They might not be bigger, but Malherbe's, it's either strength or technique. I don't know which it is. But there's something there. There is a difference.
He slimmed down a bit, Malherbe, as well, from the start of the season. I'll add that. I was not impressed with his conditioning.
Well, he played 76 minutes this week.
Fine.
Yeah.
You're absolutely fine. 130 kilograms. He's not slimmed down at all.
Well,
pudding.
He's a big boy.
Huge boy.
If he went to France, so much money.
Oh,
but it's the fact that they brought and they looked like a team that could retain the World Cup.
Oh yeah,
as bad as England were, they were very, very good. And what must be really tough to play against when you're playing South Africa like that is, they've got that power game, but actually the kicking game is really good. Their kick chase is excellent.
Their kick chase is superb.
Puts you under pressure. Their defence, they're up in your face. Their set piece, if you knock on, you're in for trouble and you might give away a pen. They just grind you.
Is it Andrisi who...
Arendse,
and whichever. Didn't he score a great try from it? Did he get a red card? Is that the same guy? Same game, he sort of scores a great try from the kick chase.
That was against New Zealand, wasn't it?
Yeah,
he took
that's
out
the one.
Bowden Barrett in the air.
And he just keeps on harassing you. I think the kick game of South Africa is brilliant. I think it gets even better when Hendrixie is on.
Yeah, you mentioned it. It's nice to see Faf playing well again, because he sort of had a bit of a wobble.
Yeah, he wasn't very good for a few games.
No.
In Candid.
This was a nice game for him. Front foot being a horrible, just not...
It doesn't stop.
Just, in your face.
Stop.
I think he did go... there was a half break by Marcus Smith. I don't know if you saw this, where Faf was like covering across and he dived.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw him dive a couple of times.
Full blown at exactly where Marcus Smith's head was, but because Marcus Smith had just been tackled, Faf just went straight over the top.
Yeah.
If Marcus Smith had stayed broadly in the same position, that would have been an absolute cast iron red card.
The red card given was one of the more brutal ones I've seen, actually.
That was... So I spotted it live.
I did as well.
And I was amazed that Angus Garden didn't, because he was about 4 metres away looking directly at it.
Yeah.
And it was... That was such a clear red card.
I saw a lot of people.
Brutal.
I saw a lot of England fans and I'll talk about Razzie in a second, but who were less than complimentary about Angus Gardner. I mean, it wouldn't have changed the result.
No. So I think the two things can be true.
Yeah.
I think he made some mistakes on both sides. I actually think I tried to be objective. I've watched both of them back. I actually think neither try should have actually stood.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be probably softer on the Orense one, the first one, because he does change his line. I'm not sure he does it intentionally, but he does change his line, and that does have an effect on Freddie Stewart, which sets up the initial break. And the Villiers-Leroux final pass, it definitely goes forward. Whether, if it was called as a try on the field, I don't think I would have overturned it. From that, I probably would have overturned the Orense.
The Etzebeth try, there was a missed knock-on as well, but hey.
There was also, I think it's Malherbe, clears out Itoje head-on-head.
Yeah.
It's a knock-on, and Itoje's knees are on the floor, or one knee is on the floor when he picks it up. So there's actually 3 separate incidents on that one. Now again, neither of those things are going to turn the game.
No.
South Africa still would have won comfortably.
Yeah, 100%.
But those two, definitely the second one, was an incorrect decision.
So I must mention Rassie Erasmus quickly, and it's relevant to this game, because I think I've changed my tune, and I think, Eddie, go.
Mm-hmm.
It's time. We can talk about...
And get Razzie in.
yeah, right.
We get the refs on our side.
Oh, my word. So there was meant to be, I don't know whether it was mentioned in the TV, but there was meant to be a presentation for Wayne Barnes for his 100th cap. It was mentioned. Good.
Yeah. Whether it was mentioned in TV, I've read it. It was supposed to happen.
Wayne Barnes, who lives just up the road from Twickenham, officiated his 100th Test match. He was meant to get a presentation, a huge moment in his professional career, and the RFU pulled it because of the comments of Rassie Erasmus in the game that Wayne Barnes officiated against France. And with so many South African fans in the stadium, it was thought that it might be quite an embarrassing. Now, my general view would be, let the South African fans boo, and it will look terrible on them.
You highlight,
but the fact that Rassie Erasmus brought about that set of circumstances just underlines. It's not the point itself, but it underlines what a disgrace Rassie Erasmus is, and what really, really wound me up is the World Rugby statement coming out just before kickoff, a couple of hours before kickoff, basically saying, we've had a chat and we've got a level of understanding. And I'm thought, you're World Rugby. You should be saying to Rassie Erasmus, do this again and you're banned for life.
Yeah, I'm sort of... I mean, I read some of his tweets after the France game. I didn't find them particularly horrendous. I mean, I just didn't. And I don't like the narrative going around that because he tweeted this, because he tweets X, abuse Y happens, and therefore he is responsible for the abuse.
No, he hasn't incited anyone. Anyone that does anything, they do that off their own back, and they're responsible for that.
I also don't like the fact that England decided not to do the presentation for Wayne Barnes. They should if fans boo, they boo. It's not on them. Wayne Barnes deserves that presentation. It should absolutely happen.
And Wayne Barnes could have taken that as well.
He's got broad shoulders.
Yeah,
he's used to being called all sorts of things.
I mean, if anything, that's sort of like fans. I don't know. It's just a terrible.
It's a bad decision.
I agree with you that it was a bad decision. Yeah. But I also disagree with you, JB, that it's not as big of a deal. I think Rassie Erasmus is beyond the pale and I think needs to be given a final warning.
It needs to be dealt with, certainly. I just don't know if this is and there needs to be a punishment proportionate to the crime. So the question then becomes like, what kind of crime is this? How bad is this crime? And I struggle to get that upset with it. This is not like the Nick Berry situation.
Yeah.
With the Nick Berry situation, I might have banned him for life first time off. If you want to play stupid culture wars and accuse a ref of racism, you can go now. There's no second chance. There's no appeal process. You're gone.
Yeah.
The next one.
I guess I can't separate the two when in judging this.
The Nick Berry one, it makes me so angry.
Yeah.
The Nick Berry, it's
such
a disgraceful thing to do. Yeah. And but he will justify it.
Maybe that is prejudicing this, but for World Rugby to come out and go, basically we've had a chat and come to an understanding.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. The danger is, of course, that they come down so hard on Rassie that everybody else doesn't talk. And it'll be more than just not tweeting. It'll be just no comments whatsoever. And that's difficult then, because we do want to know what's happening. We do want to know the inner workings of a coach's mind, and the more open they can be, the better. Just in this case,
Yeah, but Rassie Erasmus, he keeps claiming that I was just giving my thought on some refereeing decisions. But he didn't really show a lot of contrition.
Never apologised, never explained,
and he never. If he's, as he said, he's talking about he just wants to raise the standard of refereeing across the board, and that's his motivation. It's like, okay, well, why don't you show us some of the decisions that go against you? If that's the
show
point.
some good decisions.
And why don't you do it when you win games?
Yeah.
Show some really good, clever refereeing by Wayne Barnes, and we'll believe you. There's obviously some kind of narrative behind it. Here's what I really can't. There's two things. So this is largely a Twitter fantasy, what's going on with Rassie, because it was the biggest story in the world on Twitter. And I'm on how many rugby groups? Quite a lot of them. Talk H, Fantasy Rugby, EggChasers team, Armed Forces Rugby,
Broughton Park Vets.
I'm on a lot of rugby groups, totaling probably a couple of hundred people minimum. Nobody mentioned it.
No.
Nobody mentioned it. So it was very much a confected Twitter hysteria. The second...
Oh, sorry, Mastodon hysteria now, isn't it? Haven't they all gone to Mastodon?
Got no idea. It sounds like hell. Moderating hell.
I do love it though when there was a perceived issue with people on quote unquote right wing, and they needed they needed to shut them all down. They went, okay, well, you're telling us we can just go on and make our own. We'll go and make Parler.
Oh no!
And then, no, that's going too well. We're going to shut that down as well.
Exactly.
But now it's the other way. They've gone, well, we're going to make our one Mastodon, and it sounds like it's a
terrible
absolute hellscape.
Yeah, I completely agree. Hellscape is exactly the word. The second one is Matt Williamson, or Matt Williams. Is it Matt Williams or Matt Williamson? Matt Williamson is the NFL scout, isn't it? Matt Williams is the ex-Scotland coach.
Yes, defence coach.
Yes.
Yeah,
so he says some very sensible things about head injuries. Very sensible. And believe it or not, apparently trusting science and doctors is not the thing, just not the done thing. And the amount of the same people that are whinging about the abuse.
Was this on the Aussie TV? Or no, Virgin Media in Ireland. He's an Aussie.
Yeah, that's the one. So the same people that were complaining about the amount of abuse generated from Rassie's tweets, we're quite happy to skip the middleman and just go straight for the abusive comments to Matt Williams.
Call for him to be sacked for saying I'm not a doctor, so I wouldn't want to overrule the decision of the doctor on the field of play. And
Matt Williams was 100% correct in two regards. We should definitely trust the medical staff, because that's what they're there to do. Pointing out it was not an Australian doctor; it was actually a World Rugby doctor. And the last thing which he said is, this isn't the main talking point from the game. And the studio was just aghast that they don't want to talk about brain injuries for the next 5 minutes. It's a 10-minute segment on brain injuries. You've got to move past it.
It's like the World Cup. It's like the Football World Cup. There's a load of people been saying, I'm not watching now because I just watch the games. I don't watch any of the punditry because I'm there to watch football, not to hear about all the other stuff.
It's so true. Although... watching football for football's sake, as I found out this week, is dreadful. I mean, this is the pits. Football is nothing without its fans.
It's a beautiful game.
Yeah. So I don't like football fans, really. I don't like the football fan culture. But without alcohol and atmosphere.
On this, I had in the media room at Twickenham when I was presenting on TalkSport, and I was doing all the preamble bit with... going over to Miles Harrison, James Hook in Cardiff and chatting with them. Then the game got underway and they were doing the commentary. So I went down to the media room and I had to ask 3 different people before I could get the Wales-Australia game on in the media room in Twickenham because the football was on.
No.
Yes.
Incredible stuff.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. So actually, back to my my football point about the crowds.
Oh, sorry, but the football it wasn't even football. It was that was the point where it's between the first 2 games. So the Saudi Arabia whatever it was game had just finished. There was they were pundits, and I had to ask to put the rugby on at Twickenham.
That's
anyway.
Incredible. Yeah. So the thing I was going to say about that is because they've banned alcohol. I mean, football is only good really for. Playing fans full of alcohol and making them say nasty things to each other for 90 minutes. That's what it is. That's why the atmosphere exists. And I hate the whole thing, the fans are the most important thing. Turns out they're probably right, and I don't like that, but fine. But it does make me think, where is rugby going if we start cracking down in the Millennium Stadium on alcohol? We don't want this municipal swimming pool atmosphere which have generated in the World Cup.
The Friday night atmosphere.
Oh, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. So
Get some vuvuzelas.
oh,
That'll improve the
a dream.
atmosphere.
But yeah, so a bit of a ramble about crowds and Matt Williams there.
Just one thing before we finish this game. There was a man who didn't play for England this week for a very good reason.
Corny Laws.
That's one man who's played in the preceding games.
Jack Willis.
This man here, who's just this evening made his Toulouse debut.
Oh, this evening!
This
wow. This is going to be one
Jack
of the...
Willis has played for Toulouse tonight. I
Yeah.
might start watching Top 14.
Wow. Apparently, Cowan Dickey's next. Cowan Dickey will be next. Obviously, Simmons is gone. Marchant's there. The reorientation to France is well underway.
Dan Robson's there.
Yes.
The other Willis is gone somewhere. Bordeaux.
Do you remember we all started watching Italian football when a few players went over there? Gazza and Paul Ince went over there.
Yeah, and Channel 4 made a
We started
fortune of it.
watching
that when-
Corazzo.
Channel 4.
So
With
the whole thing was...
the big four Italia.
Gazzetta Football
Well, no, was it
Italia.
7? There wasn't a big 7 sisters.
But no, I'm thinking the logo. The four
yeah.
Italian football logo.
Yeah. So it used to be cool, didn't it, if you got the Italian paper and like an espresso and went to the and went to a cafe.
You're always cool to have an espresso.
That is true,
A double
actually.
espresso.
So I'm gonna say
Macchiato.
That's what I did as a kid.
Mondo.
As a kid, that's basically why I want to do what James Richardson's doing. I want to sit in an Italian cafe with an espresso, reading the Gazzetta dello Sport.
Tell you what, I always read the local paper. I mean, I don't understand it, but I always read the local paper.
You understand the pictures.
Understand I told you in Malaga, the stuff I got, 300, what was it? 300 kilograms of cocaine seized?
Yes.
To work?
In fact, James Richardson might be not both simultaneously inspiration and nemesis because he has all the gigs I want. Like, I really want to do. If I could pick a gig to do, it'd be World's Strongest Man.
Yeah, great one.
I really want to do
Kicks off
that.
soon, or the televised
Christmas.
show
He's got
kicks
a
off
good,
soon.
real good gig, but you can't have it because of hers. Is Lauren Smith doing the CrossFit stuff? That'd be really cool going to the games.
Going to the games would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, very quickly. So if Eddie does go, because Bill Sweeney's come out and said there's going to be a review. The way that was worded,
Secret review. So we don't know who's on the performance review
we
panel,
don't.
do we?
We don't.
But they've been holding this
How
every
do they
year
not know?
since 2019.
But I think if the trigger is pulled,
Yes.
who takes over for the World Cup for you? Because part of the reason why I was always thinking don't do it is because the choice you'll have next October will be far greater than the choice you have now. And my first choice would be Andy Farrell. You're not getting him before October next year.
Tell you
No
what,
chance.
I wouldn't
No
go for Andy
chance.
Farrell. So that's not a list high up, so a name high up on my list. Don't know why. I just don't like. Don't really like the style of teams that he puts together. But anyway, I'm sure he'd do a great job. But he just wouldn't be high up on my list.
Winning team with Ireland, number one team in the world.
It's good, don't get me wrong. But do you want that for England? Yes, you want the outcomes for England.
Yes.
Do you want the process for England?
I would take the out. I'll take whatever it takes to get the outcome.
I'm not sure about that. There's a political lesson in this as well, though, isn't there? So how many candidates do you see who want to run for, say, Prime Minister or be the Prime Minister or run for US President who just miss their window of opportunity? I think this has happened to Rob Baxter. Rob Baxter was the man a few years ago. He could have told the RFU when he wanted the job and they would have given it to him. But right now...
I'd still be happy with him. I think it was...
Yes, but that window is closing.
No, I think it's going to be Steve Borthwick.
That's the one for me.
Yeah.
That's the one for me.
And I think Steve Borthwick could be in charge on February the 4th against Scotland. I really, really think we could be there.
And I say I don't like Farrell. I don't dislike Farrell, but probably the most Farrelly like coach for England would be Borthwick in terms of the process and the organisation which will put in place. So, yeah, but that'd be the one for me. And if Farrell does take that job, it does literally mean that the window has closed on Baxter. It was, by all rights, his job for the best part of 5 years now.
I don't think he'll mind too much. Although X is looking a bit with all the financial
dicey, isn't it?
So it's all dicier, and they're not able to keep hold of the players that they develop. And
But they're a well-run club. They will develop more players. It's just they will be in a transition. They've got a transition period, then hopefully they'll have a period of stability, and then they'll have another transition period. Because I genuinely believe Baxter is good enough to do that.
No,
I think he is.
But if he goes to England, who does he take with him? And I think at that point, you've really got problems at Exeter. Because they've not just got to replace one guy, they've got to replace a whole culture.
Yeah.
You know, does Ali Heifer go? Does
Rob Hunter?
Yeah, Rob Hunter. All these boys, probably, because he's going to want people that he can trust. Unless England say no, you can come, but we need to pick your assistants because this job might be seen as too big for him. International job. We're gonna surround you with Sean Edwards style characters.
Well, Sean Edwards has just re-signed in France, hasn't he?
Yeah, but before he re-signed, he did say that he was open to a conversation with England, and there was no conversation had.
Yeah. Well, no one wants him because he's a defence coach. So they want him as a defence coach. I would not give the keys to the castle to Sean Edwards to run the whole programme.
Oh, no. But I'd have him as he'd be number one choice in the world as a defence coach.
So that's why there's no conversation, because England don't need a defence coach. They need a head coach, and they'll bring him on board. And I'm not even sure that Edwards wants to move sideways again. I mean, he spent so much time developing his career. It strikes me that he wants to be offered that top job. So when there's no conversation, there's not the conversation he wants to have. But
it's interesting because he's almost opted to be defence coach.
Yeah,
for such a long period of time with Wales.
Was he not head coach for
Wasps? Yeah, but you're going back like 15 years, aren't you? But ever since then, he's been happy. If he genuinely had the ambition to do more than that, he would have done. My assumption is he would have done what Ronan O'Gara's done.
Well, Wigan.
Yeah, that wasn't like
wasn't meant to be that one, was it?
No, that wasn't meant to be.
He's no Michael Checker
in any dimension.
Ronan O'Gara would be an interesting one.
Scotty Robertson.
Yeah, Scott Robinson be.
Could you see him
remember
wearing an England tie breakdancing in Paris World Cup final?
Horrendous. The other thing I remember as well is it's a 9-month job, isn't it? Because you might not win the World Cup, you might win it, and in which case you'll get a huge offer from someone else.
Well, if you could take someone for 9 months, I'd do what Wales are reportedly considering doing. I'd take Warren Gatland in a heartbeat for England.
Yeah, that is the
Wouldn't
ultimate.
you for 9 months, Phil? If you knew you could have Warren Gatland tomorrow until the end of the World Cup,
I probably wouldn't. I'd probably stick with Eddie still. I don't know why.
I would go Gatland.
It's stupidity, blind faith. I don't know why.
When England...
part of me just wants to see, like, it either go well or just completely fall apart. Because Eddie is now totally backed himself into a corner, which is
judge me on the World Cup.
Judge me. This is all a stepping stone. This is all part of the plan. And he's actually saying that. He just relaxed when they lost to Argentina. He just sits there. Yeah. Part of the plan, stepping stone, nothing too bad.
It kind of reminds me a little bit. I remember Steve Diamond at Sale. He came in, he went, right,
that's your boy.
We've got a 5-year plan. He's like, 3 year. We're on a 3-year plan. And then 2.5 years into it, when it's not going well, look, this is year 0 now. Yeah, this is year 0. It's a 5-year plan.
5-year plan. Ridiculous. I'm so fascinated to see, because we might all be sat here in 10 months' time with England winning the World Cup.
Laughing at this episode.
Yeah,
Steve Diamond raising the World Cup, the Webb Ellis Trophy.
We should have trusted him. I'll be saying, guys, you didn't back my boy.
Yeah,
I was the only one who backed him.
Yep.
I suspect there'll be a quarter-final loss to Australia. And you two will be saying, JB will be saying, I've been saying this for 5 years. You've been saying, Tim, I've said this for a year. And I'll be saying, what on earth was I thinking? What was wrong with me? All the signs were there.
It is quite fun that it is going to be one of those two ends. We're in a polarised world, and Eddie Jones has made the England situation. It is going to be. There's going to be people hating that England are world champions.
Warren Gatland teaming up with Borthwick is my ticket. Because I don't think Warren Gatland can do it on his own. I think Warren Gatland is sort of a symbiotic relationship with his other coaches. His other coach was Sean Edwards. He's not there. It hasn't worked well for him.
Yeah, because Gatland's not a hands-on coach. He's like a CEO, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's like, I've got the vision. I know what we're doing, and I know how to get the people in place to make that vision come true.
So can those two guys work together? If they can, that is then your dream ticket. If not, you surgically remove Baxter, Rob Hunter, Ali Heifer. They all go as a block, and they're delivered to England. And at that point, you throw an extra on the bus completely because they've got to reinvent themselves again. God, imagine that, taking the extra job.
Unless they just get told it's a 9-month period.
Yeah, put them on secondment or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe do both jobs.
Yeah.
No,
well, I don't think you can do it in a World Cup,
Well, people do, though, don't they?
There is,
football.
You do it on Football Manager, you can do that.
Yeah, you can, can't you?
Michael
if it's a big
Checker.
enough team, you've got enough support, maybe you can do that. And that might work well for Exeter because they don't want to reinvent their coaching wheel. They could probably be okay with Ali Heifer stayed on.
We'll have time to talk about this if the review happens and the exit happens.
Yeah.
So
I just can't see it actually happening unless Eddie goes in there and he's like, I just don't care anymore. Like, just sack me. I just can't see them doing it.
The way he behaves, you think he's already past that.
Yeah. He's not far off. He's so laid back, he's horizontal in some of those interviews when they lost to Argentina.
Did you see the post-match interview this time round?
Yes.
I haven't.
We're talking about the positives that they can take out
he's nearly
of
in
it.
tears, which is a good sign.
Eddie Jones?
Yeah. Towards the end.
Not from what I saw, but he talked about the positives. He did say he was not happy with it. He was far less relaxed than the Argentina game. He said that there are two main areas, set piece and the aerial battle, that they completely won both of them. And then it's kind of like, well, what happened? Like, how did they completely win? Don't just tell me that we need to correct this, because it's not like South Africa did things that you've never seen them do before.
No.
You kind of knew this was coming.
Simple isn't easy.
One of the most frustrating things, we spoke before about the players available to England, particularly in that tight head prop position. But after 2019, England poached the man who masterminded the South Africa scrum, Matt Proudfoot.
Yeah.
He's been embedded for the last 3 years. What's he been doing? I think it's one of those, like, it's like Ben Ryan going to Fiji. For the sevens.
Interesting.
Ben, here are all the biggest, strongest, fastest sevens players in the world. They're all at your disposal. You've got dozens of them.
This podcast is sponsored by NPR's podcast, The Last Cup. Lionel Messi is arguably soccer's biggest star, but winning the World Cup has always eluded him. The Last Cup is a tale about confronting age and human limitations, a story about loyalty, identity, and what his journey reveals about us. Hosted by Argentine journalist and NPR correspondent Jasmine Garst, The Last Cup is a dual-language narrative podcast focused on Messi's memoir. What's expected to be Messi's final World Cup, the podcast will explore themes of capitalism, immigration, class, and race. Check out The Last Cup from NPR and Futuro Studios. Find it in NPR's embedded podcast feed.
Here's an interesting thought experiment for you. Who would do better? Matt Proudfoot coaching Fiji Sevens or Ben Ryan coaching the England scrum? And would you notice a difference?
It would be identical. Both results would be totally identical.
No difference.
Well, let's leave that there and talk about another man under pressure, Wayne Pivac. Pivac.
He looked like a man on death row after that game. The way he was just standing by the Welsh emblem in the tunnel. He looked like a condemned man.
34-13 up.
With 25 minutes to go, something like that.
I mean, I struggle to put this squarely on Wayne Pivac in the same way that I put it squarely on Jones. Not particularly fair, but that's how I feel.
I do. So, I think some of it is on Pivac. I think some of it's on the players. So let's
Anscombe going off was a turning point.
Anscombe going off.
If he didn't get injured, they win. But
so yeah, and this is where I put some of it onto Pivac's shoulders, because 20 minutes to go, Anscombe goes off injured. Tipperick goes into the bin. He then voluntarily brings off Faletau and Alan Wynne-Jones and Ken Owens. Now, Ken Owens comes back on, but
oh my God,
you lose all of the leadership.
About 200 caps, 220 caps.
Yeah, and the rest, hundreds of caps.
Yeah, but say those names again, and then say those names with their ages and minutes this season underneath their belts, and you think, well, what do you do?
So Faletau, amazing, scored that try that very few back rows in the world would score in the corner. Anscombe and Tipperick's playing amazing, but he was off for a yellow card. Anscombe obviously goes off injured. Ken Owens was playing brilliantly, and he's actually played really, really well despite being 35. Alan Wynne-Jones, I wanted to make a Moneyball point on Alan Wynne-Jones.
Please.
Which was if you didn't know that Alan Wynne-Jones was 100 years old, and if he had someone else's hair that didn't make him look like a 100-year-old troll, and you saw his galloping runs and offloads throughout that game, you would have thought he was like the next big thing.
Yeah.
You would have thought he was the up-and-coming... If you'd have said, we've got a 23-year-old lock, he's rangy, he can play ball, he's got amazing hands, you would say it's that boy. But because you know it's Alan Wynne-Jones, you think he's a declining force. He had a brilliant game.
Yeah, well, the problem with older players, it's not their top end. Their top end remains fairly good. It's how consistently they are top end. And with Alan Wynne-Jones, I've seen him have some very quiet games recently. This is one of the games he played brilliantly, and there's no two ways about it. But I just think when you got 37, 35, 32, and you're on the 4th autumn international, you've got to rotate that team.
But when the wheels start to fall off, so again, maybe it's hubris because at 34-13 up, Wayne Pivac thinks, oh, it's kind of done. I'm sure most people watching thought it was done.
Yeah.
But now, did you though? Because particularly in international sport, momentum is a beast, and you felt that momentum shift strongly.
In the window up to getting 34-13, Wales were dominating the driving maul. They were dominating the scrum, and there was this flip. It was like all the Welsh boys were thinking about the brains lager they were going to have,
Delicious.
the session they were going to get on after that game. And they switched off at the same moment Australia switched on, and their scrum was dominant, and their driving
and at
maul.
that point when that momentum shifted and it starts to get tense, what you would do to have someone with 130 caps on the field,
Yeah,
or two of them,
or two of them,
100 caps,
stood under the post, going, "Follow me, we've got this."
yeah. This Welsh team,
that's the moment.
and Pivac's whole regime actually, it reminds me of like a spendthrift son who has inherited his father's wealth, and they're just spending it because this team can't go on for much longer. They're not bringing any new guys in. Or they are kind of. Jack Morgan's
Morgan,
Rio Dyer,
Hawkins, who played 12, who looked pretty handy.
But they're just squeezing every ounce out of these older lads, and it can't last forever. And when they finally go, it's not clear to me they've got ready-made replacements anywhere. It's going to be bloody difficult.
Well, this is what was odd about this is Wayne Pivac doesn't need to think beyond the end of that game.
Yeah,
because he knew what the consequences were, which is why maybe it was hubris in a different way, much as Eddie Jones. But really tough one.
Here's the thing, though: you look at that game and you go, "Do you know what? There were some bloody good things in that." And I watched the first half. I thought they were brilliant.
They were great. They should have scored at the end of that first half. If they score at the end to put it 27-13, and then if they start the second half like they did, the game would actually have been over. But they played some great stuff. Yeah. They look good. They look good for the first
you can actually go
15 minutes in the second half.
Look at England. Tell me what your favourite thing was about England, and you might have one or two things. You think, yeah, okay, it's good. There's something to build on there. Maybe if you're really, really kind.
You struggle. The Jack Noel break down the right hand side. The try.
Well, there's loads to like about Wales.
Loads, absolutely loads. Loads of positives you can take out of that.
The issue is, of course, who they were playing. So the Australian team has lost to Italy. They had something like 20-something men unavailable. The French players couldn't play. Japanese players couldn't play.
They only had 25 players that they could select from.
Oh, is that the stat?
Yeah.
There you go. You know, so they were.
The 31-year-old prop make his debut.
Who's
The guy that came on. I can't remember his name.
Oh, they got a yellow card.
Yes.
Yeah.
That boy
came off for Slipper, who went off injured.
Shout out for
no, not him, not Donaldson.
No. Oh no,
Was it? Not Donaldson.
Robertson,
Robertson. The other one.
Talakaya.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Waratah's boy.
Yeah.
He actually played. They said he played against the Lions in 2013 for the Waratahs, but that was his debut for
Good for him.
Australia green and gold.
Yeah. I do love Australia. Well, first of all, I love any team which contains Allens and Lens. There's not enough Lens playing rugby now. Although I don't really have much time for Langies and Jeds. That's not really my thing. No, Jed's all right, isn't it? Jed's a bit old school.
Jed is old school.
Jed, Allen, Len. I've got massive amounts of time for lads like that winning games, especially when it's Len Ikatau. That's cool. I loved watching Australia win this, Not because of some schadenfreude on Wales, just the togetherness of that squad. 25 guys, last game of the season, in the millennium, and to come back like that. You saw what it meant to them. I hate talking in those terms, but it looked like a very, very special bunch. And it looks like a lot of very special drinks would have been drank that night. It looked brilliant.
The
Can't
ni-
imagine being part of a team like that. It'd be great.
The knives are out in Wales now, though. Do you think there's anything in this Gatland chat?
100% true. It's 100% true. So I can confirm it's 100% true from a source other than the Times, but I can't tell you why. It is something which has been discussed. It's I think that we'll probably see Gatland talking a lot less in the press over the next couple of weeks.
The thing I find most disappointing with Wayne Pivac's team, and like you say, in this game, if you take away the result, there's plenty to feel positive about. And there were glimpses at the bit that's been lacking so much from Wayne Pivac. He got given the Wales job because of the job he did at Scarlets, where he played a very expansive game. He threw caution to the wind, and you sort of felt like he got given the Welsh job because, going back to what we talked about, playing to the talents you have, that actually suits Wales. They've got lots of very, very mobile back rows.
Yeah.
They've got a relatively lightweight pack that can be mobile, and they've got some rapid guys who can play. But they've just gone inside themselves, and he's just gone away from that. I don't understand.
Well, you've got to remember, he got given the Scarlets job on the strength of winning the Celtic League or whatever it was at the time, Pro 14, whatever it was. And the year he got it, there's like a delay while Scotland served out the rest of his contract. So, in terms of how they handled the succession, the WRU did it really, really well. It's sort of the kind of succession I think the RFU want for England. Nice, orderly transition. But during that year with the Scarlets, they were rubbish. Absolutely terrible. I think there was doubts about him coming into it because the Scarlets had lost their way early doors. So I don't know if he tries to do the same things at Scarlets at Wales as he used to do at Scarlets, and if it's completely different. Don't know what it is, but it seems to be they appointed a coach who had one trick, and that trick no longer works, and that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
Do you know Australia have also got a Ned?
Oh, I love that.
Ned Hannigan.
Yeah, Ned, Jed, Alan,
yeah,
and Glenn.
And it's Mark Nawanga Nita Wase, isn't it?
It is. So I'm really impressed.
Pete Samu.
Sorry,
Pete.
Big Pete.
Big Pete.
I'm massively impressed with Australia. I mean,
the way that they've, after losing so many players, the way that they have turned up, and it's not been the best tour overall. They lost to Italy. They lost by a couple of points to France, or 1 point to France. Was it 2 or 3 points to Ireland in close games? I think they'll take what they've got to do is focus on the positives rather than negatives. Don't focus on the games they've lost. Focus on the positives they've done with the players that have been available.
Here is an untrendy thought, very untrendy thought. But you want any coach in the world for England, I wouldn't look far beyond the fellow in charge of Australia.
Dave Rennie.
Dave Rennie's a cracking coach.
They won't go for Dave Rennie.
No, but if he's available after the World Cup, I mean, that would be one he'd get an interview. No choice about that. He'd get an interview. In fact, if you remember this, but our new best mate Corey was saying that the best New Zealand coach is Dave Rennie.
Interesting.
And the worst one is Foster. That's just the way it goes.
Foster. You mentioned before about the billionaire's child squandering wealth.
Yeah.
What do they say? It's made first generation, spent second generation. There's nothing left by the third generation. There's some saying like that. What's his name? Graham Henry was first generation.
Yep.
Hansen was second generation. Fozzie's third generation.
Exactly right. Just squandered.
Squandered. It's all gone.
Squandered his inheritance. It's sad to see. All up his nose. Shame.
Oh, poor Wales. Poor Wales. But congratulations, Australia.
Yeah.
Is
that it? Did we wrap up the international podcast?
I think there's one other thing that's worth mentioning on the international podcast from my side. There might be other stuff that you guys want to talk about, but I think it's a suitable end to the podcast. That
I know where you're going with this.
The very sad news broke during the England game of Doddy Weir, and it's terrible, terrible, terrible news. And we had such an honour of the experience that we had to interview Doddy, and it was
a highlight of the nearly 10 years on the podcast.
Highlight, and it was remarkable for two things, that interview. Obviously the incredible honour, but that kind of goes without saying. It was remarkable because point number one, just from a physical aesthetic aspect, in a room full of big men at the World Rugby Awards, one man stood out more than most, head and shoulders above almost everyone in the room, and obviously in his amazing tartan. Doddy Weir stood out as a giant amongst giants at that point in time. And then when we got to actually speak to him, and the kind of the humility, but the humour and the high spirits that he had and shared with us, it's a remarkable moment that we got to experience, and a truly remarkable man.
Yeah. And I think the one, when someone announces they're ill or they're sick, and it might be terminal in some respect, you get a lot of warm words coming from. What I think's very, very noticeable about Doddy Weir is nobody was saying anything different to what they said before he announced his illness. The things people said afterwards and the things people are saying now after his death are exactly what people were saying when he was just one of the guys, and a very, very, very special human.
We had a bit of a poignant moment in Didsbury Talk H when it was announced. We turned on the TV and all raised a glass, which was quite a fitting tribute.
And it also and as someone else who's been very much part of the podcast, and it would be appropriate to mention is Ed Slater, and I certainly thought of him as well. And so, yeah, I mean, as much as we absolutely would love your support at patreon.com/EggChasers, you know that if you'd been in a bar with Doddy Weir, you would have, everybody in that whole room would have offered him a pint. He couldn't possibly have physically drunk all the beers that people would love to have bought for him. Same goes for Ed Slater. So, you know, as much as we'd love your support, patreon.com/EggChasers. Actually, if it was one or t'other, just go to Ed Slater's MND fund, go to Doddy Weir's and give them a pint's worth.
Yeah, indeed. My name's Doddy, name with a 5. My name's Doddy Foundation, and Ed Slater is the 4-Ed, Gloucester Rugby 4-Ed. And both of them are available on Just Give In. And,
you know, this will lead us nicely into the next podcast we're doing. But did you see that the games between Leicester and Gloucester are going to be played for the Ed Slater Cup?
Yes. Are they? That's cool. That's very cool.
It's a lovely touch.
Who's building the cup? Where's it coming from?
I've no idea. I don't know anything beyond the headline, but that's a lovely touch.
It is a lovely touch. I think they need to get this trophy right, though. What would you want the Tim Cocker Cup to be?
I'd want it to be a wrist. A golden wrist.
Oh, hang on. Is there not like a music award which is a wrist with a microphone? I'm sure it's like not a Grammy or something.
Yeah, it might be. I think you might be right.
Music radio award.
Yeah, you might be right. I'd go for that.
Yeah, I'd go for something similar to the Stanley Cup, but bigger.
Yeah.
So here's something really interesting about Stanley Cup. Okay, so there's two.
What about a kettlebell?
Kettlebell.
Oh, the Kettlebell Cup.
Golden kettlebell. That'd be amazing, actually. So
that would be amazing. Solid gold kettlebell.
Yeah, play for that.
That'd be awesome. I love it.
Yeah, because also, I mean, Didsbury Talk H is a sort of orange, amber, gold type colour. So maybe they could play for it, I don't know, with Colwyn Bay or someone. Perfect.
I'll tell you a kettlebell. I never do kettlebell exercises.
Do you not?
Very, very rare.
Joe Rogan says that's all you need is a pull-up bar and a kettlebell if you want to do a full workout.
Well, someone sent me a video last week of something using those two things, so I tried it. So it's hanging from a pull-up bar and with a kettlebell in your other arm, and you just got to curl the kettlebell and press it over your head.
Wow.
So
I could not do that.
Wow, I could.
So
that sounds rock hard.
So I worked up. I was in the hotel gym, and I worked up from 8 kg up to 24.
Are you meant to hold your body level, like because you must hang.
You'll just hang. You just get it up. Yeah. Just get it up. So I worked from, and I managed. I don't think I could have done any more with my left hand. I think I'd probably max out at 24.
I don't think I could do the hanging
on my left hanging. Well, you're hanging, so it's For me, it's 80 kg plus 24, so I'm hanging on one hand with 104.
Genuinely, hanging on one hand is awesome for your grip strength. It's brilliant, which helps your deadlift and helps all the lifts.
Yeah, of all the
grip
exercises, grip strength is not one which I need much assistance on. For whatever
well,
reason
then you'd be fine hanging.
Yeah,
I guess so.
Yeah,
never thought of that.
Easy. But it's quite. Just try it. See how you get on. It's an unusual move.
It sounds very unusual. Do you push the?
It's a little bit like what's it called, bro?
It's curl and
bro
press.
science.
Have you seen?
I'm definitely not doing it for anything other than just to see if I could do it.
Have you seen the Instagram account of Amazing Workouts? But the guy is like, he bench presses things in the gym you're not meant to bench press, like the actual bench itself.
Yeah,
so
or doing press ups with a sofa on his back.
Yeah,
and someone lying on the sofa.
Oh, just general. I can entertain myself for hours just watching gym fails.
God, some of them are awful. You're like, that person's never going to walk again.
Yeah, they are disasters.
Horrible.
A subcategory of a subcategory of gym fails is treadmill fails. I just can't get enough of treadmill fails.
Many of the treadmill fails are. It's like natural selection.
Yeah,
because they're doing something completely, trying to jump on a Swiss ball that's on a treadmill.
Oh, so
of course that's going to end badly.
Or they're going sideways on with like stilettos on or something like that.
Yeah.
So to be a truly funny video, you have to have disasters, fails happen to people with not just primary consequences, but secondary consequences. So if you fall off the treadmill, that's quite funny. But it's even funnier when you fall off it into the, the weight store and then the weights fall on you like straight afterwards. It's got to have a secondary consequence, otherwise I'm not interested.
You need to be like a human mousetrap. Or Scrabble Scramble or whatever it is.
Like the one which got me the other day, someone falls off his skateboard. Good enough. He picks up his skateboard because he's so angry, goes to smash it, hits a lamppost and hits him back in the face like, yes. Yes.
Right, we're done here. We've got another podcast coming in your feed very soon, though, so let the boys play.
The boys play.